Hey everybody, it's Minius, and this is another original video idea that I've put off for a while with the hope of getting more information, but that hasn't happened and probably won't happen for another couple of months, so I figured I may as well touch on the topic before letting it go any longer, because, well, antagonists and enemies are really important to video games. The right or wrong villain can easily make or break a game. This video is going to be about what we know about enemies in Mass Effect Andromeda, which, like everything else, isn't much. I'll speculate a little bit off the stuff we know, and then get into some things that people want from the antagonists in the new game.
So what's our next move?
Let's start off with these guys, who were in the announced trailer from last year. There was a leak who described enemy aliens as a sort of cross between Collectors and Vorcha. This zoom-in pic is a little bit fuzzy, but that description does seem to fit. The big Reddit leak, and that's where most of our information on Andromeda comes from, talks about a faction called the Ket, and I think these aliens are Ket, but there's nothing that says that for sure. In fact, we don't even know if Ket refers to an alien race or an organization. That leak does tell us a little bit about the Ket, though. We know that they're interested in acquiring Remnant tech. If you're unfamiliar with all these leaks, the Remnant is the name of an ancient and mysterious alien race whose lost technology holds the secret to gaining power in the region the game takes place in. And if there is a race for technology and the Ket are hostile and want that advanced technology to gain power in the region, it makes sense for you to want to get there first, which is about all we know about the plot at this point. But the Ket will attack settlements and have outposts throughout the region, and you apparently want to thwart their growing power. Now, the Ket are not the only new aliens in Mass Effect Andromeda. The big Reddit leak talks about forming alliances with warring alien races, implying that there are at least two species, possibly in addition to the Ket, and that you might have to choose between those two. This potentially sets up an interesting enemy dynamic where you may literally have to choose an ally, which would make you enemies with the other faction, and possibly allow you to do another playthrough, where your previous ally is now the enemy, and your previous enemy is now your ally. I like this idea a lot, and many of you said you'd like to be able to choose your enemies. This certainly is a way to do that. I'm pretty sure that these things from the most recent trailer are enemies, but I'm currently of the belief that they are creatures of animal intelligence. We dub them Space Bears on Andromedas, which is a name that I really hope sticks. But if I'm right about their intelligence, your adversarial relationship with them is unlikely to be more complicated than somebody facing a grizzly bear in the wild, which is interesting but doesn't quite fit in with this video. The last enemy we know about is definitely more complex, because he's human. In the gameplay leak, there is this guy, who's distinguished by a tattoo on his face, but obviously isn't friendly. He also doesn't do very well, because the Krogan who he's pointing a gun at unleashes some kind of gas or pollen grenade on him, and in the final trailer that's fully official, probably the exact same guy gets dropped over a ledge.
It's a lot easier to count their numbers once you blow some of them up.
I think his fate in these two clips kind of rules out him being the main villain for Andromeda. At least, it's incredibly pathetic to get owned a full 9 months before the game comes out. But one thing is clear, not everybody who came from the Milky Way is your friend. The same leak that described the Collector Vorcha aliens also said there was a human soldier antagonist, and others have speculated that the guy featured in the announced trailer could be an antagonist, which is a definite possibility. I want to go on record as saying that I am not that excited about the idea of taking on humans in Mass Effect Andromeda. There are so many other options for enemies that I'm a little disappointed that at least one faction, and maybe the main faction you go up against, has humans affiliated with it. You can fight humans in pretty much every other game. I'd rather take on intriguing and complex alien races, and the colonial setting lends itself to this, and I don't think infighting is the most interesting option. However, I am willing to see what direction they're taking this in, and even I'll admit that a human enemy could end up being far more personal than some new alien race. Perhaps this human-inclusive enemy faction is led by a family member. Your main character, Ryder, will have a family in Andromeda after all. Or maybe the enemy faction is led by an old friend or commanding officer. Picture an evil Admiral Anderson or something. I think that could be interesting. Clearly, though, there is some kind of disagreement about how humans should go about their business in the new galaxy, and this is another point that could lead to you choosing your enemies. Maybe the human delegation is split on how to deal with the local species of Andromeda, and you may have to choose between, say, violence and diplomacy. There are also colonial aspects to take into account, though I think the species you run into in this new game will be more or less on equal terms with you technologically. At least, that makes for a more fun video game, which is different than what we've seen with natives in our own history, although maybe not all the races you run into will be on equal terms technologically. When thinking human antagonists in Mass Effect, the first organization to come to mind is, well, Cerberus. And I'm not super fond of this idea because I'd like to see something new, but a Cerberus presence in Andromeda could fit logically. The earlier Collective Orchard leak said that those particular enemies drop from Cerberus ships. I think a Cerberus splinter organization makes more sense. Cerberus itself is pretty heavily tied to the elusive man, who we know never leaves the Milky Way. Perhaps someone in the Andromeda expedition started this organization over, at least in some form. Again, I'd prefer to see something new. A human's first racial attitude doesn't really need to call back to anything.
You humans are all racist.
While there is a lot of talk about gray decisions in this new game, I would like at least one of the factions to be straight up unlikable. Again, this is a video game. You're probably going to have to shoot a lot of people, and it would be nice if some of them, deserved it. Maybe murderers, pirates, mercenaries, slavers, all-around bad dudes. There appear to be many factions in this game, and I hope that at least some of them are enjoyable to take out. Of course, ultimately, your relationship with everybody in this new game can't be so black and white. As colonists in a new galaxy, the natives are likely to see you as the enemy straight away, and some may act violently to protect their own interests. And that right there would make them enemies, but their point of view would be fully understandable. You are, after all, encroaching on their territory. The decisions of how to deal with these new enemies then becomes far more interesting. Let's take a look at some of your ideas when it comes to antagonists in Mass Effect Andromeda. Probably my favorite idea is from Prototype Platform, who would like everybody in Andromeda to start off as enemies of a sort, and your mission would be to win them over as the game goes along. This idea fits in really well with Mass Effect, and I hope BioWare does something along these lines. It's a fantastic idea. Of course, it might be difficult to be friends with everybody, but the overall mission sounds like something that I'd be interested in. OBP Guy brought up the idea of a dynamic antagonist who would in essence take the opposite stance that you do, ensuring that the two of you come into a fundamental conflict, whether you're friendly or a hard ass. I think this concept is fascinating, but I'm curious to see if it would actually work. If this was the case, you'd basically have control over the antagonist's motivations, which probably would take something away from the character overall, though I would like to see this idea tried at some point. Adam Wigley, and really the majority of you, would like a morally gray antagonist, which is something I talked about a little bit in this video, because, well, after all, the best villains are at least somewhat relatable, and it would be nice to connect with your adversary on some level. I want to thank all of you who took the time to reply to my earlier video, and like I said, a lot of you were thinking along the same lines for this topic, which was interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing if BioWare thinks along those lines too. This subject will become a lot more fun as we get more information, which hopefully will be soon, and when we get that more information, I'll be doing in-depth videos on potential enemies, and everything really. Anyway, if you like this video, please give it a like. It really helps out the channel. Keep an eye on MiniusGC for more Mass Effect videos. But for now,
I should go.